Welcome to MasteryConnect Microphase and Cycle Orientation from Monday, October 25th.
Pa, did you want to, or I don't know if Beth is in here, did you want to just set the stage a little bit?
Sure, yes. Happy Monday, guys. Hopefully everyone had a restful and restorative weekend. And thank you for spending the next hour with us to learn more about microphase data and how we will be collecting data at the district level and also at the school level to inform instruction. This is a quick turnaround, and so we are asking for schools to collect their beginning of the year data and start inputting that in. And the desire is for all beginning of the year data, microphase data, to be entered into MasteryConnect by November 30th. And so it's a longer window for entering data, but we also want to provide time for schools that have forgotten to administer the microphase benchmark assessments. And so this would be a time for them to administer and then also input it by November 30th. With that said, today's goal is basically to listen in and be thinking about whether you would like to present or co-facilitate on October 29th for an IL session, or if you are available to support schools in entering data or helping them remember the steps for entering data. And so Barbara will share more information in terms of which section you need to focus on if you are available on October 29th, which is this Friday, to co-facilitate this training session for ILs, either in the morning or in the afternoon, or if you are available to support schools in entering their data. And it would be more of a hand-holding process or a work session, or just answering questions, okay? And at this point, we've invited everyone that supports a school or supports schools to help us with this initiative, because it's going to be critical that we have this data for schools to use and also for us at the district level to measure early literacy skills in conjunction with the DIBELS and MAPS data. All right, so Barbara, I've taken already 3 minutes of the time that you don't have to complete all of this. So
thank you. Thanks for setting that stage. Just to kind of piggyback on what Pa said and just looking at the big picture and connecting this back to our balanced assessment system, we know that our EL benchmark assessments are part of that balanced assessment system as a diagnostic tool that takes us directly back to instruction for the curriculum. And we know that we are going to be able to use this to for data collection, to inform instruction, and also for building leaders and district leaders to monitor instruction. So we have some goals, some big overall goals for today. And I'm going to be very honest and tell you that the timeline is really tight. So I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to go quick. So the first thing that we're going to do is learn the process for entering data into the tracker. And then we're going to sign up for supporting schools either on the 29th or during the month of November, or both, whatever your capacity is. Linked in the agenda is a question collector document. So if you have burning questions, please put them in that question collector, because I don't have really a chat monitor for this, and it's going to be hard for me to respond like in the moment, but I will definitely get back to you either by the end of the day today or tomorrow. So I will appreciate your questions. All right, so we have our learning targets. These learning targets are also on the agenda. We're going to access the microphase map. We're going to make the tracker. We're going to enter some sample data. If we have time, we're going to look at some basic reporting, and then we're going to talk about leading PLC teams so that they can also do this work. All right, so I'm going to start with section 1 and just level set and understand that we all have a very different level of expertise in this room in terms of finding trackers, building trackers. We have some experts and we have some novice people and people like me that are somewhere in between. So I am going to go through this piece a little bit quick, just because I want to get to what's really important, which is the scenarios for entering data. So if you're the type of person that really still needs support on creating a tracker, I'll build this out in the video much longer and in more detail so that you can come back to it later. So I just don't want you to feel like I'm forgetting about those of you that still need help with these things, but I am going to go through it briefly. So when you are looking to do your curriculum map, you got to have your profile set up correctly. If your profile's not set up, you're not going to be able to get your map. I went in and checked just about everybody on this call that I wasn't sure about and made sure your profile was right. So if you don't get the map, I'll try to fix it for you in the back end. It helps if your roles are up to date, especially grade levels. If you don't have the right grade level checked, then you're not going to get the first grade map or the second grade map, whatever the one is that you need. Once you have your profile set up and you know that all of that's in place, on your MasteryConnect menu bar at the very top, you're going to click on maps, and unless you've made your own maps, it's going to look really blank and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't have any maps. Well, what you need to do is go to shared with me on that screen, and you're probably going to have a lot of shared with me. This screenshot has 34. I think in my personal one, I have 108. So depending on how many people are sharing maps with you will depend on how many you have. So it's really important that you have the naming, that you know the naming conventions. I have two examples up here for first grade and second grade for the Microphase maps. We know that the teachers are going to have, they already have an ELA map. This is going to be a second ELA map for them. Plus they have science, social studies, and math. So for our K2 teachers, this is going to be another map for them. So it's going to be important that they know how to find it. It starts with the grade, and then it has it's the one that has Microphase. And some of them might get confused with remaining Camp CMS Microphase ones that we can't seem to get rid of. So we don't want those. So once you know what your map is, and we're going to use first grade example today. So we're going to create our map from the tracker. Just click that. It's really easy. And then it automatically names your tracker for you based on the name of the curriculum map, which I think is really helpful. So you don't even have to worry about naming it. If you're naming your map, you probably didn't do it right, because you probably just made your own map and didn't make it from a curriculum. If you're naming your tracker, it's probably because it's your own side tracker. But you can put in a description, you can color code it, and the teachers want to drop this down and add students through SIS, but we're going to do something different if you're going to facilitate helping with this. So if any of you feel like you just really want to branch out and help teachers with building their trackers and walking them through, it might be helpful for you to have some fake students. I'll show you what my fake students look like in a minute, but what you can do is click on add students individually, and then it'll bring up a window where you can type in your fake names, and you can be super creative. Pa uses the characters from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I stole that from her because I thought it was really funny. So now all my fake students are from that show. All right, so I know I went over that really quick, and if you need more in-depth step-by-step walking through that, I will timestamp that in the video for you so that you can get that extra support that you need. I'm going to keep going unless there's a burning question that we have to answer right now. Thumbs up. All right, Ryan said thumbs up, so that means it must be good. So I'm going to just do a really quick tour of the curriculum map and the tracker, because for me, this one can look a little bit intense if you don't understand how it's built, because it has every single cycle in the skills block, scope, and sequence from kindergarten through 2nd grade. So it can look really intimidating no matter what grade. If you're in 2nd grade, you're still going to have the K2 scope and sequence. If you're in kindergarten, you're still going to have the K2 scope and sequence. So it's a lot for them to have in there. So I tried my best to organize things to make it easy for them to manage. So this is what the microphase map looks like when everything is collapsed, so that you can't see all of the cycles. And everything's color coded to match our EL materials. In EL, we use pink for kindergarten. We use this teal for 1st grade on grade level standards, and we use like a goldenrod color for 2nd grade on grade level standards. So that, if you're ever wondering why, it's not just because I geek out over color coding. It has a real meaning. And then down here you have the benchmark assessments that are tied to this curriculum map right now. And there's 3, because there's a possibility that a student might need to have data entered for more than one of these, depending on how much of the scope and sequence they've mastered at this point. This is just a big now like open view of what it would look like if I've opened up the 1st grade scope. You can see the assessment document lives in there, and each cycle of instruction acts as a standard or a substandard. And then this is what it looks like when you build it out as your tracker. You've got your students from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You have your microphase, which is your main standard. And then your cycles are the substandards. And you got a lot of scrolling to do to get to all of them. So if I keep scrolling, then I get to 1st grade. And then if I keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, then I'll get to the 2nd grade on grade level cycles. So it's pretty long. And then at the very end, I have my assessments for beginning of year for the scope and sequence. So that's kind of like the high level overview of just what the tracker looks like. Ducey had this wonderful slide in their original, and I just kept it because I feel like it's really important. Like, just when we are talking to teachers, that we want to remind them that we don't want them to just make their own tracker and go rogue. So they won't receive the updates. And I know personally for myself, I've had to send out 2 updates for 2nd grade. So want to make sure that they get them. Okay, this is the part that I think I want to spend the most amount of time in, because it is a little bit tricky in scenarios and how we enter data for 1st grade students that might cover a span of 3 grade levels worth of content. So we're going to do some scenarios. This text right here comes right off of the assessment guide that is built into MasteryConnect. So they'll have this when they're opening MasteryConnect. I think it's going to be really helpful for teachers to have hard copies of their assessment data when they're entering. So I have Ashley Banks and Hillary Banks that we're going to use as our students. And then I think it would also be helpful, depending on the teacher, if they have a digital copy or a print copy of the assessment guides. And those are linked in your agenda if you want to pull them up. And this is an example of what the assessment guide looks like. This is the assessment guide that runs from late pre-alphabetic to middle partial alphabetic. It's the kindergarten on grade level scope and sequence. And what you can see, and why this is important for the teachers to understand, is that we have the microphases and cycles here. Each of these is going to match a criteria in MasteryConnect when you're scoring. And then on the right-hand column is going to be, okay, where am I getting this data from? So my first set of cycles, I need their letter ID. And then the further down I go, I'm going to end up only using spelling. It's only in this very beginning that we use anything other than spelling, because we know from our science of reading that spelling is the true level of mastery in the scope and sequence. So once we get past middle partial, they'll basically be looking at spelling. So when we score, this is it's pretty cut and dry. If there's evidence that they mastered the cycle, they get a 1. If there's evidence that they did not master it, they get a 0. And if you don't have data to show one way or the other, they get a 0, which I know seems kind of sad, but it's true. And there are going to be times, and we'll see this in this scenario, where the benchmark assessment doesn't have a data point that we can use for every cycle. So we'll look at that. So we're going to enter our data. We're going to go into trackers. I've got my first grade tracker. Hover over the test name so it'll pop up. There's 3 and it's really easy to get confused. And then you're going to click to launch the performance grader. And then this is what it looks like. This is the assessment guide that I just showed you. And this is what it will look like in MasteryConnect in the performance grader. I've got my students here. I've got my assessment guide, so the teachers can use that to grade while they have their paper copies of their benchmark assessments, and then they can score on the right. And then I know for a fact that it's really important to make sure that you're clicking on the right student, because it's really easy to think that you've clicked on Carlton and accidentally enter in data for Hillary. So I always am reminding teachers to make sure that whether you're scrolling through this way or over here, that you know that you're on the right student. All right, so we're going to do our first scenario. And we are going to do Ashley Banks's data. We have, and if you have the sample data linked, I'm going to minimize my screen just so that you can see. I made a slide deck of the sample data for you. So if you want to pull it up on a different screen or in the background, you can look at Ashley's data with me while I'm entering it in. So we have Ashley, we have her letter sound ID, and we have her decoding assessment. And so these 2 assessments are going to tell us a little bit of information, but we already know some information about her. We know she's in 1st grade. This is her BOY assessment. We're pegging her about early partial based on her assessment. And so we're going to start with the district pre-alphabetic test, and that's important that we know where to start. So I'm going to minimize and kind of just walk through what this would look like. Tracker, I'm in my 1st grade tracker. I'm doing a 1st grade example. I'm going to hover over to find the assessment that I want, and I've already determined that I'm looking for the pre-alphabetic to middle partial. So this is the one that I want to assess. I'm going to click on assess. And I'm going to go to Ashley and launch the performance grader. And just like we had in our slide deck, it brings up the scoring sheet so that I know what criteria I'm scoring and what assessment I'm using. So for the first 11 cycles, I'm going to use my letter sound ID assessment to score. And Ashley she only made a few errors. She has an error with X, D, L, P, O, and I. So there's more that she has right than that she has wrong. So I think I'm going to just I'm going to mark the ones that she has wrong first, and then go back and mark the ones that she has right. So when I'm looking at my cycles here, I know that she missed the letter X. She doesn't know the sound for that, and that's cycle 9. And so I'm going to go to criteria 9, and I'm going to mark she doesn't have mastery of that. Even though she might have the other one that goes with it, she has to, it's all or nothing. And then I'm going to, she also missed D, and D is part of cycle 7. So she didn't get that. She did not get I, the capital I sound, and I is cycle 6. And then in the lowercase letters, she did not get P, and that was 2. And she did not get O, and that was cycle 10. Now I'm going to stop just because I don't have a split screen, and I want to make sure that you guys are able to follow along with how I'm using my data to match all those cycles up. Is there anybody that needs clarification about how I went through and did that?
Just a quick question. So if they miss 1 out of 3, we're saying no. Like if they miss one thing out of that cycle, it's a no, because they haven't mastered the entire cycle. Thank you.
That's right, Danielle. We kind of went back and forth about, well, should we make it a 1, 2, and a 3? And then we're like, no, because then we got to make a rubric. Like it's all or nothing. They've either mastered that whole spelling pattern for that cycle or they haven't. And I think we're going to just be like cut and dry. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Any other questions? Because I'm going to finish off Ashley's scenario. All right, so I'm going to go back and mark the rest of these mastered, because these are all the ones that she did. And then when I get to 12, when I get to cycle 12, I have a new assessment that I can look at to collect additional data. And so I can use her decoding assessment now to determine that. And she has some errors on there with the short vowels and some other things. So just for time's sake, I have a cheat sheet and I'm just going to go through and mark, but you guys can follow along with me if you want. So on 13, she met. And on 15, she met. But I think that was the last one that she met. And the rest of these, either there's not enough data on her spelling test, or she didn't show evidence of mastery based on not on her spelling, on her decoding. She didn't have enough evidence, especially down here in the middle partial. There is no test. There's no test for floss words. I'm going to hit score. And with any luck, it'll save and I'll have Ashley's data in my tracker. So you can see in the grader what it looks like. And then when I go back to my tracker view, you can see what it looks like in the tracker view. So right now, as a first grader, we can see that Ashley is mastering a lot of the first grade, but we also know of the kindergarten standards. We know she's got some work to do. And because she still has a lot of work to do in the kindergarten standards, she hasn't been tested yet on the first grade. So this, we know based on the data that we entered that Ashley's going to be a student that we really want to make sure has extra supports, very targeted based on this data, so that we can get her where she needs to be. Any questions about going through how that works with the assessment? No questions? Everybody's good? Okay. All right, we are going to do one more scenario just because I want you to see what it looks like when you go into two tests. Just in case you're wondering, in the slide deck, I did put an answer key for each student. So if you're going back later and you're like looking at Ashley and you really want to know like what, there's an answer key for each student, and it tells you like my thinking to the side where I got the information and where there was not enough data based on the assessments that we had. So the next student that we're going to do, we're going to skip Carlton just for time's sake, and we're going to go to Hillary because I want you to see a student that has two assessments that we're going to enter. Hillary took the spelling test. She took the partial alphabetic spelling test and scored a 9, and that made her it put her working in the late partial alphabetic phase. And then she also has her decoding test, and she did the partial alphabetic middle and late, and those were pretty equal for Hillary. So because she's in that late partial alphabetic phase, I want to go ahead, and she's a first grader, I want to try to start her entering her data in the first grade range. So I'm going to enter data first in the first grade range, and then I'm going to go back and see what she mastered in the next set. Same process for entering. I'm looking for middle partial. I know I got the right test because I was looking for the first grade test and it's blue. So I know that I got the right color coded test. And I know that I'm in Hillary. I don't want to accidentally mark on Carlton's scores. So when I'm looking at Hillary's scoring, the middle partial cycles 1 through 4, I need to use that partial alphabetic spelling list. And when I'm looking at her partial alphabetic spelling list, we can see that she has some short vowels, but then it goes into digraphs. And when I look at her spelling test, the section that she missed on that partial alphabetic list is all of the digraphs at the end. She missed then, rush, chef, she missed those digraphs. So from cycle 2 and 3, she doesn't have mastery of those. And then cycle 4, there's no evidence of. And then just for time's sake, I'm going to tell you she didn't master any of the other ones. So even though she is working in this section, she's working in it, but she hasn't mastered all of the patterns yet. So the point of this scenario is when you get to this situation where the student is kind of hovering between 2 grade level spans of cycles, you may need to enter in data in more than one of the assessments. So I've got Hillary entered. I'm going to go back to my tracker, and I can see within the first grade range, she's working in that range. She just hasn't mastered. Any questions about that part? Okay. And then the next step for Hillary, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it seems like I think you guys are getting it. I'm going to go back a step because we know that she's mastered a lot in this section. So if I were to go through here and mark everything that she's mastered, she has a lot more mastery here. And I'm not going to make you watch me enter everything. I'm just going to show you the stamp the learning. So that was our scenario. So this is what her scoring looks like. This is what we did in MasteryConnect. And on the first grade, she only was able to prove that she had mastery of 1. The rest, we just don't have enough data for her yet. We're going to need more data points. And then this is what her data looked like from the late pre to the middle partial. So she's got a lot of skills mastered here, but we can also see clearly what she needs to work on. So this is not only what she needs to work on, but where we might need to get more data points. All right, so we're not going to do Will. Will's super fun. So if you want to practice on Will later for your own, you can. So I just want to kind of like stamp a bottom line here. We have a lot of good benchmark data, but the way that we've built out these trackers is to the granular level because we want to know for sure that students have mastered the cycles. And so there are going to be times where the benchmark assessment is not going to give us enough information. And this is where a next step, not right now, a next step down the road is going to be helping teachers add in like their snapshot assessments or their cycle assessments so that they get a full picture of where their students are with their assessment data. That's coming up. We got to get through this first part. All right, so any burning questions, comments that you want to get out before I go into the next section? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So this is just what it would look like if the tracker was completely filled out for all of the students. I went ahead and filled out a kindergarten and a first grade scope and sequence for each of them so that I could see where I needed to do the most of my work. And then you can also do some reporting. There is a student mastery report that kind of shows you like the percent of students that have mastered each spelling pattern, which I think is pretty cool. So like just looking at this data, like if this was my whole class, I could really easily see that pretty much the majority of my kids need some work on digraphs. So like that's something that I can work in like as we're traveling down the hallway, like we can be practicing digraphs. So just some neat reporting. We're not going to do a lot about that right now, but I just wanted to show you where we can go with this. So our next steps is to look at supporting schools in rolling this out because we know that this is going to be a heavy lift and we want to make sure that they have all the support that they need. So we have 2 signups that we're going to talk about. We are looking for help with the 29th, Friday. And there are some different roles that people can take. You can be brave and be the facilitator, the host, you can co-facilitate, you can produce, you can be the chat monitor. And we've got 2 times on here, 8:30 to 9:30 and 1:30 to 2:30. And then if you are available and you want to just pop your name in to be a sub, just in case an emergency comes up, there are spots for you to fill in if you want to add as a sub. So that's for the 29th. And then there's also a spreadsheet for you to sign up to support schools during the month. And I'm going to just exit my slide deck so that I can just show you what these look like in real life. So the signups are, you guys can see the agenda, right? I didn't mess up my screen. Okay. The signups are down here. The October 9th schedule is here. You can sign up. Everyone should have editing access to go in there and add their names. And then the November sign up is a little bit trickier. We are going to put out, I have a Google form that we're going to put in the memo that's going to go to schools on Wednesday, asking if they are going to want additional support in helping their teachers get this data entered. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use I'm going to kind of facilitate that. I'm going to use the requests that come in and kind of match them to the schedule that you guys put in here. So I'm going to use Ryan as an example. Like if Ryan says that he can do a Zoom, you know, he's available to do a Zoom session on the 3rd, you know, in late afternoon, and I get a school that needs that, then I'm going to send that school's name to Ryan. He's going to follow up with them and set the specifics and what they need. So that's how this spreadsheet is going to work. We know that the 1st and 2nd are teacher work days. So even though it's a quick turnaround, it would be great if we get schools that if they need help, that we can help them on those 2 days. But we do have a tab for each week in November, except for that very last week. And I'll add that tab if we have the need to do that. So if you, any place where you have time, you can pick, you can say, I feel comfortable doing a Zoom session and supporting, or if you prefer to be the type of person that goes in and sits with the PLC and walks them through, you can sign up to do that too. So those are the signups. And that brings us pretty much to the end.
Thank you, Barbara. I know that Beth came in later on, and so Beth, we're just going to open this space up to see if you have anything else you want to share with this team and the importance of this work.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I apologize for my tardiness today. Hope you are doing well and preparing for the storms that are supposed to be coming. A huge thank you to Barb and to the team. I think, Ryan, you have been heavily involved in that as well. Multiple iterations have taken place, and there was a go, then a pause, and then now we're at a go again. So thank you, and thanks to everybody for being here today. This is really designed to be both informational and an opportunity for cross-departmental collaboration if you are able to. There is no expectation if you are not in learning and teaching. If you're in learning and teaching, there is, but there's no expectation outside of learning and teaching. We just want to extend the opportunity so that everybody's on the same page, and that we are able to be inclusive as we start to move this work forward with schools. My understanding, Pa, we're going to be really kind of just giving schools, hey, this is where we're headed. Here are 2 options. Option 1 is take it and run with it, right? Come to an optional session, watch a screencast, whatever you're most comfortable with, take it and run with it. However, option 2 is we will come and do whatever it takes to help you get this data in here. And if that is sitting here and entering it, as Barb talked about, we'll do that. If that is supporting your PLC in entering it, we'll do that as well. But whatever folks need. Just one point of clarification that's really important to Dr. Ratley, who works with our learning communities and our equity team. She does not want for this to be messaged in any way, shape, or form as something that's being added to November 1st and 2nd. I think that there are lots of people, out there that are like, oh my gosh, they're giving us a teacher work day, maybe pending board approval tomorrow night. And then they're adding more stuff that we have to do, right? I know, right, Jen? So I think we want to be really careful in messaging to say, this is something we were gonna do anyway. We did not want to add it to the start of the school year for everybody, given everything that was going on, but entering Q2, we most assuredly need to make sure that we have math and ELA data in MasteryConnect, right? So we can monitor progress, and we want to support you throughout the month of November to get that done. So we're just trying to be very careful about that narrative. We're not adding anything to November 1st and 2nd. There's no expectation attached to November 1st and 2nd specifically. But we're here to support you on November 1st and 2nd if that's what your school chooses to do. And we'll be prepared to support you throughout all of November in this space. I added it to the FAQ, but y'all, when we're thinking longer term, around what we need to be able to know about where our students are and then need to be able to report out to our board and all other parties and stakeholders, we need to know where kids are related to reading foundational skills. And as I put in the FAQ, it's my highest hope that we'll be able to then have this data, and when we go on learning walks and when schools do learning walks and when school leaders are walking into classrooms, during that 45 minutes of differentiated time, they have something to be able to go off of to make sure kids are working where they need to be working. Does that make sense? Because it's kind of hard to figure out if you don't have the data, it's really hard to know what kids should be doing during those 15-minute blocks. Sarah and Heather, I'm looking at you from an intervention standpoint. Similarly, right? This is a way of us being able to track how students are progressing as well from an intervention lens. From a language acquisition lens, that's a little more of a stretch, Amanda and Alyssa, but it still pertains, and then from an EC lens as well. So just wanted to provide context there, Pi. Hope that is helpful. I'm happy to hang on and address any additional questions. When I say there is zero, please don't go back and say to somebody, Beth Thompson said you have to sign up to support. Beth Thompson did not say that, unless you're in learning and teaching, then I did. But please, 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 please. However, if you're able to and or would like to, or you have a deep relationship with the school, like I could see some dual language schools that would be like Alyssa or bust, right? So if that's the case, and you can find a way to support in this endeavor with schools that you have deep relationship with, that would be so welcome. I think that's it.
Thanks, Beth. That was super helpful. I appreciate the big overview and reminders. Next steps, if you are willing and able to support some sessions, would be to sign up, first of all. And then if you need to feel a little bit more prepared, because this was a very quick and high level overview, the full length recorded, like step by step video will come out Wednesday, and I'm going to timestamp it so that everyone can easily see like what section like most pertains to them. And that will be super helpful if you are planning to go to schools, and even if you're not like planning to go to schools to support, like just so that if you are in schools and they ask you questions, like you're like, oh yeah, I know you use the document that's in MasteryConnect and you match it with the cycles, like just so that you can answer those questions. I know that's super helpful. So